The chair recognizes Mr. Roy of Franklin.
Madam Speaker, I rise in favor of S9, an act creating a next-generation roadmap for mass climate policy. I want to thank Speaker Mariano for your continued support, leadership, and commitment to robust climate policy. Your work in moving this legislation so quickly in this session is compelling. And because of your leadership, Massachusetts will continue its work as a national leader on climate protection by setting interim emission reduction standards, establishing appliance energy efficiency standards, authorizing additional purchases of offshore wind power, and codifying protections for environmental justice communities. It has been an honor to work with you, Mr. Speaker, and my predecessor, Leader Golden, to get this bill over the finish line. Leader Golden's pioneering work over the last 3 sessions and his most recent work shepherding this bill through the House has been monumental. I have witnessed it firsthand in our partnership over the last 4 weeks, and for his partnership I am eternally grateful. I also want to thank the Senate President and the Senate Chair of TUE for their collaboration and commitment to getting this next-generation roadmap in place so quickly. And I also want to give a special thanks to the TUE staff, particularly Caleb and Magna. I don't know where I would be today without them. They're remarkable and knowledgeable people who are tremendous assets to this institution. And we do extend our appreciation to the Governor for a number of technical amendments that strengthen the bill and ensure it is implemented as efficiently as possible. We heard the Governor's concerns, we worked with him on some changes, and are sending back a bill that remains strong. In light of the critical need to act decisively and quickly to fight the climate crisis, we rejected those amendments that departed from the bill's goals. There is no doubt that climate science and policy is complicated, but it demands immediate action to avoid what is essentially the most significant existential challenge of our time. With this bill, we address that threat head-on and demonstrate that we can fight climate change, grow the economy, and support the most vulnerable at the same time. The goals we set, particularly a 50% reduction in emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions by 2050, are tough. But I am reminded of President Kennedy's moonshot speech at Rice University in 1962. As he said then about space exploration, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. And that speech and goal sparked a frenzy of innovation, an ambitious public-private partnership, and great success. And I have no doubt that the provisions in this bill will do the same in addressing climate change. And so that's why we set statewide emissions limits and subsector limits every 5 years to reach 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. And we made sure that the emissions limits would be legally binding to keep the Commonwealth on track with the roadmap plan. Nonetheless, and because we realize that decarbonization will be a big undertaking and harder for some industries to comply with than others, we built flexibility into the process. As long as the Commonwealth is reaching its goal for a given year, sector sublimits will not be legally binding for that same year, giving the sectors for whom decarbonization will be most difficult a little more time to catch up. We kept intact the composition of the Board of Building Regulations and Standards expanding it from 11 to 15 members. And that enhanced membership will ensure a better level of coordination between the DOER and the BBRS, especially as we instruct them to develop and promulgate a new municipal opt-in specialized stretch code. We established a specialized energy code that will allow for net zero building performance standards for towns that want it. Our current stretch code has already been adopted by 288 communities. Net zero is the next step. And we make sure that the state's building code, while remaining ambitious, provides our design and construction professionals with clear guidelines as to what is expected of our building sector. We protect green communities by specifying that if a green community chooses not to adopt the new specialized stretch energy code, it will not lose its green community designation. And as Leader Golden spelled out, we set the criteria to define and strengthen protections for environmental justice populations and ensure they play a meaningful role in evaluating the environmental health and safety impacts of proposed projects in their communities. We increased the requirements for offshore wind energy procurement, boosting our capacity by 2,400 megawatts to bring us up to 5,600 megawatts, enough wind power to power as many as 2.8 million homes. As you can see, the bill is an incredibly comprehensive and groundbreaking piece of legislation. Every one of you should be proud and no doubt will look back at this moment as one of strength and resolve. Today, with your vote, you not only set a pathway for decarbonizing the Commonwealth, but thanks to all the environmental justice and mass CEC and workforce training provisions, you ensure that our path to decarbonization is fair, equitable, and inclusive. Thank you all for your past support of this bill, and I urge you to support it again by voting in favor of S9, keeping Massachusetts as a national leader on climate policy. Thank you so much.